Commander Daeho Kim pressed his face against the cold metal of the observation window. Outside, space burned with the light of dying ships. The battle had been going on for 3 days now, and still neither side could claim victory. Red and blue plasma bolts streaked across the darkness like angry fireflies. "Sir, we lost another cruiser," Lieutenant Soo-Jin Park called out from her station. Her voice shook slightly. She was young, barely 25, and had never seen a battle this brutal. The morning star just went dark. Daeho closed his eyes for a moment. The Morning Star had carried 800 crew members. Good people. People with families back on Zephyr Prime. Now they were nothing but scattered atoms floating in the void. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked quietly. 43 combat-ready vessels, sir. The Vorthak still have around 60. The numbers told the whole story. This war had been going on for 107 years. 107 years of death and destruction. Daeho's grandfather had fought in the early battles. His father had died defending the Kepler station. Now here he was, continuing the same bloody cycle. Captain Min-Ho Lee walked onto the bridge, his uniform torn and stained with coolant fluid from the last attack. His left arm hung in a makeshift sling. "The engine room took a direct hit," he reported. "We can fight, but we can't run." Through the viewport they could see the enemy. Vorthak bioships looked like giant sea creatures swimming through space. Their hulls were alive, covered in what looked like scales and tentacles. These ships could heal their own wounds and grow new weapons. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. The Zephyrian ships were different. They looked like floating crystals, all sharp angles and glowing edges. They were fast and precise but fragile. One good hit could shatter them completely. "Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Yuna Cho," the communications officer announced. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired. Dark, circles under her eyes, gray streaks in her black hair. She had been fighting this war for 30 years. "All ships, prepare for retreat to Rally Point 7, she ordered. "We cannot hold this position." "But Admiral," Captain Lee protested, "if we retreat now, they will take the entire system. 3 billion civilians live on those planets. And if we stay, we all die, and they take the system anyway." The Admiral replied coldly. "I have made my decision." As the human ships began their withdrawal, the Vorthak bioships pursued them like hungry sharks. Their weapons made sounds that somehow traveled through space, wet, slithering noises that made everyone's skin crawl. On the bridge of the Vorthak flagship, Commander Zixanth watched the enemy retreat with satisfaction. His bioship, the Devouring. Ma pulsed with pleasure at the taste of victory. The ship was alive and it fed on conflict. "Shall we pursue and finish them?" asked his second-in-command. "No," Zixanth replied. "Let them run. Tomorrow we will take their planets, and the day after that we will take their homeworld. This war is almost over." But the war was not almost over. It had been almost over for decades. Every time one side gained an advantage, the other would adapt and fight back. The Zephyrians would develop new crystal matrix shields, so the Vorthak would evolve new bioweapons. The Vorthak would breed faster ships, so the Zephyrians would build more precise targeting systems. It was an endless dance of death and improvement. Both civilizations poured everything they had into the war machine. Art, music, literature, all forgotten. Children grew up knowing only combat training and military history. Entire generations had lived and died without knowing peace. Far away from the battle in the halls of the Galactic Council, ancient beings discussed the situation with growing worry. The ethereals, who were made of pure crystal and light, whispered in frequencies that hurt to hear. The luminari, beings of living energy, flickered with concern. "This conflict threatens the stability of the entire sector," said Council Member Veltar, an ethereal whose voice sounded like breaking glass. "Both species are dying. Soon there will be nothing left but empty worlds and floating graveyards. What can we do?" asked Lumen, a luminari whose light pulsed slowly with sadness. "We have tried diplomacy. We have offered aid. They will not listen." "There is a young species," suggested Ambassador Kithulos. who looked like a walking tree, made of metal. In the outer rim, they call themselves humans. They have recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Humans? Veltar's crystal body rang like a bell with amusement. What could such primitives possibly offer? They have not even left their home system completely. Perhaps, Cthulhu said slowly, that is exactly what we need. A fresh perspective. The war continued to rage, unknown to both sides that their salvation might come from a small blue planet on the edge of nowhere. The small silver ship appeared near Earth's moon without warning. Captain Hyunwoo Choi was drinking his morning coffee in the lunar observation station when every alarm in the facility started screaming at once. "Sir, we have an unknown contact," Sergeant Dasam Lee called out, her fingers flying over the control panel. It just materialized out of nowhere. No engine signature, no heat trail. It's like it just popped into existence. Hyunwoo set down his coffee cup and moved to the main display. The ship was unlike anything in Earth's databases. It looked organic, almost like a flower made of metal and light. Beautiful but completely alien. "Are they hostile?" he asked. "No weapons detected, sir. In fact, they're broadcasting a message, multiple languages. Wait, they're learning English as they speak." The main screen flickered to life. A figure appeared that looked almost human, but with skin that seemed to shift color like oil on water. When it spoke, its voice was melodic but strangely sad. "Greetings, beings of Earth. I am Ambassador Cthulhu of the Zephyrian Coalition. We come seeking aid in a matter of great urgency." Within hours, an emergency meeting was arranged at the International Space Station. Colonel Yoonji Song led the human delegation. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had served in 3 different wars on Earth. Beside her sat Major Jiho Nam, a tactical analyst known for his ability to spot patterns others missed. "We need your help," Cthulhu explained, his skin shifting to deeper blues and purples. "My people have been at war with the Vorthak Empire for over 100 years. Billions have died. Entire star systems lie in ruins." Colonel Song leaned forward. "What kind of casualties are we talking about?" "Casualties?" The ambassador looked confused. "All beings fight. All beings die. This is war." "No, I mean civilians. Non-combatants, women, children, the elderly." Cthulhu tilted his head like a bird trying to understand a strange sound. "All serve the war effort. There are no non-combatants." Major Nam and Colonel Song exchanged a quick glance. "What about medical facilities?" Nam asked. "Field hospitals? Evacuation procedures?" "Medical facilities." The ambassador's skin now showed swirls of yellow and green. "Damaged fighters are recycled into new equipment. This is efficient." "Recycled?" Colonel Song's voice was very quiet now. "You mean the wounded are killed?" "Of course. A damaged fighter cannot fight. Why waste resources?" The silence in the room was deafening. Major Taemin Yang, who had been quietly studying the tactical data, finally spoke up. "Show us how you fight." The holographic display filled with images of space battles, massive fleets facing each other in straight lines, like ancient naval battles but in 3 dimensions. Ships fired until they were destroyed or ran out of ammunition. No tactics, no strategy, just raw firepower thrown at each other. "This is your standard battle formation?" Yang asked. "Yes. Both sides arrange their strongest ships in front, weakest in back. We fire until one side is destroyed. No flanking maneuvers, no feints or diversions." Cthulhu looked even more confused. "Flanking? Feints? I do not understand these concepts." Yang pulled up Earth's military history on his tablet. "Have you ever tried attacking from multiple directions at once?" "Why would we do that?" "It would divide our forces." "What about attacking supply lines instead of fighting ships?" "Supply lines are not combat vessels. There is no honor in destroying them." Colonel Song stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Earth below. Her homeworld had seen countless wars, but even in humanity's darkest conflicts, there had been rules, concepts of mercy, Strategy. Protecting the innocent. Tell me about your commanders, she said without turning around. How do they communicate during battle? Each ship receives orders before battle begins. Once fighting starts, there is no communication. That would be showing weakness. So if the situation changes, they can't adapt? The situation does not change. Two fleets fight until one is destroyed. Major Nam shook his head in disbelief. No wonder this war has lasted a century. You're not fighting a war, you're just grinding each other down. Colonel Song turned back to face the ambassador. What about negotiation, surrender, prisoner exchange? Surrender is death with shame. Prisoners are a burden. Negotiation is for the weak. The human delegation sat in stunned silence. These aliens had all the technology to travel between stars, but they fought like ancient warriors with spears and shields. No strategy, no mercy, no understanding that war was more than just destruction. We need to discuss this among ourselves, Colonel Song said finally. Can you give us 12 hours? As the ambassador's image faded, Major Yang turned to his colleagues. They're like children with atomic weapons. They have no idea what they're doing. The question is, Colonel Song replied quietly, can we teach them? Outside the station, Earth turned peacefully in the darkness, unaware that it was about to change the course of galactic history. President Boram Kang stood before the emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. The room was packed with representatives from every major nation on Earth. The decision they made today would change humanity's place in the universe, forever. The aliens are desperate, she said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. They've been killing each other for over a century and don't know how to stop. They're asking for our help. The Russian representative raised his hand. What can we possibly offer? They have ships that can travel between stars. We barely have a moon base. That's exactly the point, replied General Wansik Park, standing at the podium. They think like machines. We think like humans. After 6 hours of heated debate, the vote was unanimous. Earth would help end the Galactic War, but on humanity's terms. 3 weeks later, Admiral Eugene Park stood on the bridge of the Earth, Ship Harmony, watching her small fleet approach the war zone. 200 human vessels surrounded her, destroyers, frigates, medical ships, and supply carriers. They looked tiny compared to the massive alien fleets ahead. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Zephyrian command ship, reported Communications Officer Min-Kyung Lee. The alien commander appeared on screen, his skin shifting to worried purple patterns. Human fleet, you must join our battle line. Immediately. The Vorthak are preparing another assault. Negative. Admiral Park replied calmly. We'll handle this our way. Your way? But you only have 200 ships, we have thousands, and we still cannot win. Admiral Park smiled. Commander, you're about to learn that sometimes less is more. Captain Wan Ho Jin commanded the stealth squadron, 12 small ships that were almost invisible to alien sensors. His orders were simple but strange. Don't attack the enemy fleet. Instead, find their communication centers and supply depots. Target acquired, reported his weapons officer. Large communication relay lightly defended. Take it out quietly, Jin ordered, and broadcast our message on all frequencies as we leave. The human message was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. Instead of threats or demands for surrender, it was an offer: medical treatment for the wounded, safe passage for anyone who wanted to leave, food and shelter for refugees. On the Vorthak flagship, Commander Zixanth received reports that confused him greatly. They destroyed our communication hub but sent us a medical offer? Yes, sir. They say they will treat our wounded bioships without charge. It must be a trap, Zixanth decided, but doubt crept into his voice. Meanwhile, Captain Haiwan Yu was doing something the aliens had never seen before. She was coordinating between Zephyrian ships in real time during battle. Her small command vessel stayed behind the front lines, gathering information and sending instant updates to friendly forces. Zephyrian cruiser Crystal Dawn, enemy bioship approaching from your starboard side. Suggest evasive pattern alpha. Human. Command, This is Crystal Dawn. We don't understand. How do you know where the enemy is? We're watching everything at once, Yu replied. Trust us and follow our directions. For the first time in decades, Zephyrian ships began moving together, like a single organism instead of individual hunters. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Enemy forces that had expected easy targets found themselves facing coordinated resistance. Dr. Insu Han sat in his small communication ship, studying psychological profiles of enemy commanders. Unlike the aliens, humans had spent thousands of years learning how people think, what they fear, what they hope for. Patch me through to the Vorthak commander, he ordered. Sir, that's impossible during battle, his communications officer protested. Make it possible. Minutes later, Dr. Han was speaking directly to Commander Zixanth in the middle of combat. Commander, I can hear your bioships screaming. They're in pain, aren't they? Zixanth was shocked. No enemy had ever spoken to him personally during battle. How do you know this? Because we listen. Your ships are alive and they're suffering. We can help them. You lie. This is psychological warfare. Yes, it is, Dr. Han admitted. But that doesn't make it untrue. How long since you've seen your homeworld, Commander? How long since you've held your children? The question hit Zixanth like a physical blow. He hadn't thought about home in years. The war had consumed everything. Captain Mi Young-oh was broadcasting to both fleets simultaneously. This is Captain O of the Earth Peacekeeping Force. To all combatants, you don't have to die today. There is another choice. Her words reached every ship in both fleets. Soldiers who had known only war their entire lives heard something impossible. Hope. Within hours, something unprecedented happened. Ships from both sides began to slow down, not retreating, not advancing, just stopping. The great war machine that had ground on for a century was finally beginning to pause. Admiral Park watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time in over 100 years, both sides were thinking instead of just fighting. Phase 1 complete, she announced to her fleet. Now the real work begins. Admiral Eugene Park stood in the command center of her flagship, watching 3 different battles unfold on the main display. Her fingers moved across the control panel like a pianist, playing a complex symphony. This was the moment that would decide everything. Execute Operation Harmony, she commanded. Across the human fleet, 200 ships split into 3 groups. The aliens watching were confused. Why divide your forces when facing a larger enemy? It went against everything they knew about warfare. Captain Sang-ho Kim led the first group toward the massive Vorthak bioships. His 12 vessels were small and fast, carrying no heavy weapons. Instead, they were loaded with something the aliens had never seen before: cyber warfare equipment. Target the neural networks of the lead bioship, Kim ordered his technical team. Lieutenant Jimin Han, a computer specialist from Seoul, worked frantically at her console. I'm into their system, sir, she reported. These bioships, they're not just alive. They're in constant pain. The Vorthak are forcing them to fight against their nature. Can you break the control signals? Working on it. Got it. The massive bioship suddenly stopped firing. Its tentacle-like weapons went limp. Instead of attacking, it began to sing, a low, mournful sound that traveled through space somehow. Other bioships heard the song and began to respond. Commander Zixanth felt his flagship shudder beneath his feet. What's happening? He demanded. Sir, the devouring maw is no longer responding to commands. It's trying to communicate with the other bioships. That's impossible. But it wasn't impossible. The humans had discovered that the Vorthak bioships were enslaved creatures, forced to fight through pain and neural control. By breaking those controls, the ships were free to express their true nature. They were peaceful creatures who wanted to go home. Meanwhile, Commander Haya-Wan Yu was working with the second group, coordinating Zephyrian forces like they had never been coordinated before. Her ships stayed behind the battle lines, but their computers were connected to every friendly vessel. Zephyrian. Battle Group 7. You have 3 enemy ships approaching from below, she radioed. Groups 4 and 9, if you move to positions Delta and Gamma, You can catch them in crossfire. Captain Dae-ho Kim, fighting aboard the Zephyrian cruiser Crystal Sword, couldn't believe what he was hearing. How do they know exactly where everyone is? I don't know, replied his sensor officer, but their directions are perfect. Every time we follow them, we get the advantage. For the first time in the war, Zephyrian ships were fighting as a team instead of individual heroes. The effect was devastating. Vorthak forces that had dominated for decades found themselves outmaneuvered and surrounded. The third part of the human plan was the most unusual of all. Dr. In-Soo Han had established direct communication links with commanders on both sides. While the battle raged around them, he was talking to enemy leaders like they were old friends. Commander Zixanth, he said calmly, your bioships are returning to their natural state. They don't want to fight anymore. You have done something to them, Zixanth accused, but his voice was uncertain. We freed them, just like we can free you. When did you last see your family? The question struck deep. Zixanth's bioship was no longer attacking. Around him, other Vorthak vessels were also going quiet. Some were actually trying to communicate with the enemy. I have a daughter, Zixanth said quietly. She was 3 when I left for this campaign. That was 15 years ago. She's 18 now, Dr. Han said softly. Old enough to have children of her own. Do you want to meet your grandchildren? At the same time, Dr. Han was speaking to Zephyrian, Commander Taiwan Yun. Your crystal ships are beautiful, he said. They were built for exploration, weren't they? Not war. How did you know that? Yun asked, surprised. We can see it in their design. They're meant to study stars and discover new worlds. When did your people last explore instead of fight? I don't remember. The war has consumed everything. It doesn't have to. Look at your sensors. Half the Vorthak fleet has stopped fighting. Their bioships are singing instead of screaming. This could end today, Captain Mi-young-oh was broadcasting to both fleets on open channels. Attention all ships. This is Captain O of Earth. You have a choice right now. You can keep fighting until everyone is dead, or you can choose to live. Her words reached every vessel in the combat zone. Soldiers who had known only war their entire lives heard something they had almost forgotten existed: hope. The turning point came when 3 Vorthak bioships broke formation and approached the human medical vessels. They were wounded and in pain, and they had heard the promise of healing. Sir, reported Lieutenant Sujin Park from the Zephyrian flagship. Enemy vessels are requesting medical assistance. What are your orders? Commander Yoon looked at his tactical display. The battle was falling apart, but not because anyone was losing. It was falling apart because both sides were finally realizing they didn't have to fight. Stand down weapons, he ordered. Let the humans help them. Within 6 hours of Operation Harmony's start, the greatest space battle in Galactic history had become the greatest act of mercy instead. Commander Zixanth walked slowly through the corridors of the human hospital ship Mercy. His heavy boots echoed against the metal floor, but the sound was different from his warship. Softer somehow, less threatening. He stopped at a large window and stared in amazement. Inside the medical bay, Korean doctors and nurses worked side by side, treating wounded soldiers from both armies. A young human woman was carefully bandaging the arm of a Vorthak warrior while humming a gentle tune. Nearby, a human man was using some kind of healing device on a wounded Zephyrian's crystal-like skin. Why do you heal your enemies? Zixanth asked Dr. Kyungmi Shin, who was passing by with medical supplies. She looked up at him with tired but kind eyes. They're not our enemies anymore. The war is over. But we tried to kill you. We destroyed your ships. Yes, and now we heal you. That's what makes us different. Dr. Shin continued down the hallway, leaving Zixanth alone with his thoughts. For 15 years, he had known only battle and death. The concept of mercy was almost impossible for him to understand. On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Yujin Park was writing her final report to Earth Command. The battle that everyone thought would last days had ended in 6 hours. Not with explosions and death, but with exhausted soldiers finally laying down their weapons. "Admiral," Lieutenant Min Kyung Lee called out. "We're receiving surrender requests from 47 Vorthak vessels and 31 Zephyrian ships." "Not surrender," Admiral Park corrected gently. "Requests for peace. There's a difference." The communication board lit up with messages from across the galaxy. Other wars, other conflicts, all asking for the same thing. Could the humans help them too? Captain Jun Seo Lee, who had commanded one of the medical ships during the battle, found himself appointed as the first director of something completely new, the Terran Peacekeeping Corps. He stood in a conference room aboard the space station that would become their headquarters, surrounded by former enemies who were now working together. "I don't understand your methods," admitted Commander Daeho Kim of the Zephyrian forces. "You had only 200 ships. We had thousands. How did you defeat us so easily?" "We didn't defeat anyone," Captain Lee replied. "We just showed you that there was another choice." The former Vorthak commander Zixanth nodded slowly. "My bioship no longer screams with pain. For the first time in decades, it sings. Your people freed it from the neural controls we used to force it to fight. Your people used pain to control their ships," said Dr. In Su-han, who had joined the peace conference. "Pain creates anger. Anger creates more violence. We simply broke that cycle." A young Zephyrian officer raised her hand. "But how did you coordinate our ships so perfectly? We've never fought together like that before." Major Hai Wan Yu smiled. "On Earth, we learned long ago that many minds working together are stronger than one mind working alone. We shared information instantly between all friendly forces. You weren't fighting as individual ships anymore. You were fighting as one giant fleet." The questions continued for hours. How did humans end battles by talking to enemy commanders during the fight? How did they turn massive space fleets into medical missions? How did they make soldiers want to stop fighting instead of forcing them to stop? "The secret," explained Captain Mi Young, "is that we understand something you forgot. War is not about destroying your enemy. Real victory means your enemy chooses not to fight anymore." 6 months later, Captain Lee stood before the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Hall, all wanting to know about human peacekeeping methods. "Wars don't end when one side wins," he told the assembled aliens. "They end when both sides choose peace. Our job is to help them make that choice." The crystalline ethereals rang like bells with amazement. "Your species has only just reached the stars, yet you ended a conflict that lasted over a century." "Sometimes," Lee replied, "fresh eyes see solutions that experienced eyes miss." The energy beings called Luminari flickered with curiosity. "Will you teach these methods to others?" "Of course. Peace is not something to be hoarded. It should be shared." Within a year, human peacekeeping teams were deployed to 17 different conflicts across the galaxy. They didn't bring huge fleets or powerful weapons. Instead, they brought doctors, negotiators, and the radical idea that enemies could become friends. Commander Zixanth returned to his homeworld for the first time in 15 years. His daughter, now a grown woman with children of her own, met him at the spaceport. As he held his granddaughter for the first time, he thought about the humans who had made this moment possible. The war that had consumed 2 civilizations and lasted a century was over. Not because anyone was destroyed, but because everyone finally understood there was a better way to live. In the vast darkness of space, former enemy ships now traveled together, exploring new worlds instead of destroying them. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology, but their wisdom.